Ahoy crew, Silver Strike here from the Black Spot Guild, doing another Cutlass review today. So I've been trying to go through basically all the various Cutlasses that are out there that I'm aware of anyway, one by one, and if I don't have them, I'm trying to get them and do that review. So today I'm going to be doing a down and dirty quick review of this beauty here called the Corsair Cutlass, sometimes called the Barbary Cutlass, by Windlass Steelcrafts. So if you're not familiar with Windlass Steelcrafts, they're made out of India. If you're rolling your eyes, shaking your head about that, no, for the most part, Indian swords are usually quite good, and Windlass itself has been around for a very long time, doing really, really well, putting all kinds of really good stuff out there. No, it's a good company making usually quite good stuff. How much does it cost? It's roughly $250. I think I had it shipped for about $300. The problem there is, while it is not a discontinued sword or cutlass, it is no longer carried by anybody in the U.S. that I know of. So you can only get it overseas. I found this one at Southern Swords, which is based out of England. I've gotten a few swords for them over the years. So they're a really good group. They got it to me quite quickly and in perfect shape. So you have to pay a little extra for the shipping, but they're a good company to deal with. So no big problem there. Anyway, I'll move on. So overall length, it's 29 inches. So that's a pretty solid, great length for a cutlass. The blade is 22 and a half. So 29 overall, 22 and a half blade. It's pretty sweet. That's pretty short, on the shorter side for cutlasses. A lot of the other ones I've reviewed and have handled have about a 24-inch blade, so not much difference. But yeah, this is on the shorter side of cutlasses. No big deal. It's 3 pounds 2 ounces, so just over 3 pounds. That makes it a heavier cutlass as well. Again, not too much of a problem though. It's a realistically weighted cutlass for its dimensions, especially. It's not overly heavy by any means. A lot of the other ones are probably 2.5 pounds that I've dealt with, so this one's just a little bit heavier, but because of that, you have this much beefier guard and you have a beefier blade. So a very reasonable weight for sure. Blade material, high carbon steel. Windlass makes almost all their stuff out of a high carbon steel, and this one is no different. It's about 2 inches at the bottom, going up to about 2 1/4 at the flare up here at the top. So 2 inches to 2 1/4. That's pretty nice. Gives it kind of a machete look and feel, just a little bit, which is cool for what it is. The hilt down here, hilt refers to the whole guard, handle, all that stuff. So the hilt on this, solid steel hilt, really nice and beefy. They blackened it, which is awesome. I love that. That was one of the reasons why I got this guy. And they have a genuine ray skin grip there, which is really, really nice. Provides extremely good grip in the dry or wet, which is awesome and very appropriate for a cutlass. So, yep, ray skin. And underneath you have wood. So, ray skin over wood. Pretty awesome. Let's see here. Next, we'll cover, how about the scabbard? A big advantage of this guy is over some other ones too. It comes with a really nice scabbard. It's leather with metal accents there. It's no wood in this one. I don't mind that at all because I've broken the wood on some scabbards, and a broken wooden scabbard isn't too helpful. So yeah, just have it be leather. That's awesome. Ideally you don't store swords in full leather scabbards. They can rust. Because of that, the wood is better at preventing the rust. So you might not want to store it in this one, but for when you're using it, carrying it around, that's fine. That's great. Makes it a little lighter, a little less cumbersome. So I don't mind that at all. Other stuff about the sword, we'll talk about the distal taper. So distal taper on the sword is the thickness of the blade down here at the guard versus the thickness all the way up at the tip. Okay, this one has minimal distal taper. It's reasonably about the same thickness from bottom to top. That's not really a problem at all, however, for this cutlass. If it was like a medieval sword, something like that, distal taper is super important for it to handle correctly for those longer swords. But for a short cutlass like this, you really isn't much of an issue. This thing's so short, it doesn't make it more cumbersome because it doesn't have that distal taper, and it keeps it nice and stiff that you want. You don't want a cutlass to be flexible, and I'll touch on that more in a bit here. So yeah, distal taper, not there much at all, but not a concern whatsoever. And temper, so we'll get into that now. The temper of the blade that refers to when you bend it, does it stay bent or does it return to straight? Now this thing's so darn stiff, it doesn't bend well at all. If I put it over my knee, I can get a little bit of a bend out of it. And it does return beautifully to straight. So this one has a great temper. It's a high carbon steel with correctly tempered. You can have somebody make a sword out of high carbon steel. If they don't temper it correctly, it's going to be trash. It'll look good, but you won't be able to use it. So this one's high carbon and well tempered. So that's great. So let's see more about the hilt here. Let's see if you can see that. Yep. So most cutlasses like this are not going to be recessed into the guard, and this one's no different. It just butts up neatly against there, but there's no big blade gap or anything. It's very well done. Let's try to get the reflection. There we go. Very well done. Nice and tight still there. And the whole hilt is very tight from top to bottom. More about the hilt. We'll go into the tang construction here. So this guy does have a peen tang, so meaning the blade steel is one piece going all the way from the tip all the way down through the handle to the end of the pommel here. This being the pommel, it goes through the pommel to the end here. And this one actually has what they call a peen block right here. It's a separate piece, separate from the pommel, and it goes through the peen block, and they would then hammer it down and attach the whole thing together permanently. So you could dismantle this if you ground off the end here, ground off the peen, and you could reassemble it. You'd have to shorten the peen block, something like that. But you can dismantle if you had to do some kind of repair or change something. But otherwise, it's a permanently attached setup there, which is fine and historically correct. The stiffness, I always give the stiffness a rating. Again, that gets into that distal taper. I give a rating from 1 to 10. 1 being basically a wet noodle, the most flexible sword you can imagine, and 10 being just shy of a crowbar. Still realistically sword stiff, not an actual crowbar, but the stiffest sword you could find. That would be a 10. I'm going to give this one about a 9, which is, again, great and right where I think it should be. You want a cutlass good and stiff, especially a short one like this, because it was not just a weapon in battle, but it was a tool as well. They'd use them on board the ships and on land as a tool for cutting at palm trees, cutting during different tasks. So you wanted a nice stiff cutlass for sure. That was important. Some people of the sea carried stuff like rapiers, and especially shorter rapiers back then. Some of them, not as much the pirates, but seamen did, and it wouldn't be useful as utilitarian as a tool, and that's why this was such a favored weapon of the pirates. It was, you could fight and you could do daily tasks with it. So nice and stiff, right where I think it should be. And because of the handling is great, I already touched on that. Yes, it's heavy and minimal distal taper, but it still handles fantastic because of that short size. So I think this would do great in battle. What comparisons are out there? So there's not a whole lot of comparisons out there that are similar. I touched on that Windlass, or I started to on a Windlass used to have one that was almost identical, but it had a silver version of the guard. It was the exact same guard, but they didn't put the black finish on it. It was just silver, but literally the exact same guard. And that version had a leather over wood grip, not this ray skin. But otherwise it was identical. The exact same blade, the exact same scabbard. I used to have it, and then I got rid of it. I was excited they came out with this one. So that's one of the other comparisons. It's not really available, but if you see it used on eBay or something, you can pick it up knowing that it's a solid cutlass, just as good as this one. The only other comparison out there that I know of that's really similar is by Baltimore Knife and Sword. It's sometimes called Baltimore Knife and Steel, BKS. They have one called the Kraken Cutlass, that I actually have as well, of course. This is the Kraken Cutlass, about the same length. It's slightly longer, a couple inches longer, but still really wide blade. Has some distal taper, so the distal taper is a little better on this one. Really similar, though, is just the overall construction and dimensions. It's one of the only other ones out there that has a super beefy guard. I like this guard because, it's a Kraken which is awesome. Let's see if I can get some more light. There we go. It's a Kraken, which is, yeah, that's really cool. But it's one of the only ones out there with a similarly sized guard. You can see that these two are about the same. Good on the screen there. About the same there. Disadvantages, though. Let's see. Baltimore Knife and Steel. This guy is really made for stage combat. So because of that, they weld this whole guard together. It's welded up in here. And it seemed, as far as I can tell, the pommel seems to be welded on too. I didn't crank on it too hard because I didn't want to break it off, but the guard is definitely welded on, and I assume the pommel is too. Or if not, it's probably glued in place because it is brass. And then there's no wood under here. This is just leather over steel, so it makes it a little thin for my liking, but it does make it beefier for them for stage combat. The only other disadvantage to this one is this is a roughly $800 cutlass. So you're getting a stage combat cutlass that you can't dismantle because it's completely welded for $800 versus this one fully functional, just as functional, if not really more functional than Baltimore Knife and Sword for that $250-ish. So that is my issue with Baltimore Knife and Steel. Their stuff is a little bit too expensive for my taste, but being such a pirate fan, I had to have this guard and pommel. That's why I decided I needed this sword, and I splurged and got it. But that's the only other real comparison that's similar at all, other than the older version that Windlass had of that. What's the overall score I give this guy? I give this guy a 10 out of 10. I don't do that often, but when I was going through all my notes about it, there really is nothing else like it out there, and there's really nothing I would change about it to make it better if I wanted to. And any changes you would do to it would just add to the price. So for what it is, that $250-ish, I think it's basically literally perfect. It has solid overall construction. You got that good distal taper, good stiffness to the blade. The guard is super strong. There's really good, really nice ray skin grip, peen pommel. And it comes with a scabbard. That's another disadvantage too. Baltimore Knife and Sword does not come with a scabbard at all. So $800, not a fully functional sword, welded, and doesn't come with a scabbard. $250, almost same dimensions, but way more usable. Can be sharpened and used in battle, and comes with a really nice scabbard. So yeah, can't complain about that at all. Let's see, and nice that nice stiff blade. Some other ones that are they advertise them as being real and functional. They are. They're high carbon and everything, but the blades are often too flexible. So this one has a nice stiff blade without really having making the weight over the top. So then I usually would cover what did I take points away for? Nothing. I'm not taking points away from this guy at all. If you wanted to take a point away for something, you could say it's not 100% historically accurate. What it is, though, is historically plausible. So yeah, they might not have had this exact cutlass back in the day, and we're talking anywhere 16, probably even 1500s through the 1700s. You could have had something like this done. Somebody definitely could have made this back then. They were peening pommels back then using this exact construction. So did they have one with the spikes and this whole exact setup, this mean look to it? No, not that I've seen, but said a very functional and realistic design for back then, which I love about it. So yeah, if you're going for a historical cutlass, this one will not be the one for you. But if you wanted if you didn't really care about it being 100% historical and just wanted a super cool, super useful cutlass, this would be great. So is it worth it? Is it worth $250, maybe $300 shipped? Yeah, 100% all day long is this worth that price. It's kind of similarly priced to a lot of the other ones I've reviewed, and I would put it up against them all day. This one's a little heavier than those, so that's a plus and a minus. This thing's going to chop better, be slightly slower in actual combat, not to a huge extent though. But I like the added weight for this for that utilitarian purpose. So yeah, I have no issues spending $250 or the $300 I did on this. So yeah, thanks for joining. If you have any comments or questions, please post them, ask me. and I can give you more pictures, give you more specs, more thoughts on it, whatever you need. If you haven't seen my other Cutlass reviews, other reviews I have out there, check them out if you want. I'll be continuing to do more Cutlass reviews all the time. I still have a few out there to go through, so more to come soon. Well, thanks for joining me. Until next time, Pirate on.